What's going on, guys? It's Wednesday night again, and here we are with Squadron Live. It's crazy that it's Wednesday again, but I guess time just keeps flying by week after week. I appreciate you being here with me tonight. Hope you've had a good week so far. Hope you had a great weekend, and looking forward to a nice 3-day weekend this coming up weekend. Hope you've got a lot of nice plans. I don't know. We're going to do something fun, I hope. And perhaps we'll all find a few minutes to sit at the workbench and get some modeling built. That's the goal, right? I appreciate you all being in here tonight. Let's jump in the chat real quick. I got a good show for us tonight. I got a good friend of mine, Lee Leibold, that's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. But let me see who's with us tonight. Joseph, hey, how are you tonight, buddy? And Jason is here with us, and he has started on his P-51 from Edward, the Royal Class kit. Awesome. Looking forward to seeing it. I know it'll turn out great. Wayne, good to see you tonight, buddy. And Randy, good to see you. And I'm glad that you've got your Gecko models air cushion on order. Those are going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to that myself. I just think it's a really interesting vehicle, and the model is going to look really cool. I love the mouth on the front of it, the decal. I hope it's a decal. It's going to be really cool. Glad you got one of those coming. Michael, good to see you tonight. And David, good to see you. And Rex is here. And Greg. And Michael's got one of the Gecko kits on pre-order too. It's really neat. All right. While we're talking about that, since you both mentioned it, let me show it to you real quick in case you don't know about this. This is coming soon, probably into this year, maybe November. Hopefully, fingers crossed, sometime in that ballpark. This is just going to be really neat. 35th scale. I don't have any other pictures of it on the site right now, but I've got some test shot pictures that I need to upload. It looks really cool. It's an interesting subject. This new Gecko models it's new for us. Gecko models is, so it's going to be really neat. If you don't have one on pre-order, shoot over to Squadron and get one on pre-order because it's going to be really neat. And Lee Leibold's here with us in the chat, and we'll talk to him in just a few minutes. Let's see, Greg. Okay, well, we'll get into these questions in just a few minutes, Greg. As far as where Lee lives, I think he's going to tell us all about himself in just a few minutes. Let's see. Everybody else in the chat, I appreciate you being here tonight. I won't go through all of them. I apologize, but I wanted to show you a couple of things real quick before I pull Lee in here. Oh. Got a nice goodie stack here. We've had so much cool stuff coming in this week and last week. Check these out. V Hobby's new kit. They're Oakland, another Atlanta class kit. Deluxe versions are here. A lot of you have asked about V Hobby. They have a new one of the light cruisers, whichever light cruiser it is, and then an Independence light carrier. Those are going to be coming. We are going to get them, just not here yet. This is the one we've got so far from them. X Plus, got another round of X Plus kits in. The Vampirella kit that has the bat shadows as the base. This is the same sculpt as their original Vampirella, just with a different base. So that's cool. And then the one that everybody, if you're into monster kits, has been waiting on is their Dracula and the Bela Lugosi Dracula. These are finally here. They look really, really nice. So excited about that. Their next release is going to be the Mummy, and those are on their way to us now, followed by their Red Sonja kit. And then after that, I don't know which one's next. You got Wolfman, Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, another creature from the Black Lagoon. They got all sorts of those old Aurora-style monster kits coming, so keep an eye out for those. 72 scale stuff. These IAR 80s have finally arrived from IBG models. And the 81s. So these are really neat. 72 scale kits, nice subject. Haven't seen those really in 72 scale much, so those are available. Let's see. These are really cool. These are not on the website right this second. I've got to get them. They're on there, but you can't buy them. I've got to get them added hopefully tomorrow. But these are Model Collect's newest issue of their Fist of War series. They've done the American flying wings, or excuse me, the German America bomber flying wings, and now they're doing these wacky Japanese versions. So it's pretty neat. Cool stuff. Their Fist of War series is all about the what if and never was stuff. So that's a good addition to that. And then the last thing I'll show you before we get Lee on here, and this is the cool one to me. As you know, and I always mention this, the Dora is like my favorite kit, and it has been sitting there for 2 weeks now, and I haven't touched it. I'll get there. But this is Border Model's new kit. This is the German rail car with the Flak 36 sitting on top of it. And this is a very, very cool kit. If you've seen any of Border Model's kits, they do a really good job. They've been doing a lot of big scale ship kind of stuff. Like they did a 35th scale U-boat section. They did an Akagi bridge and you can put a Kate and soon a 0 and 35th scale on it. So all their kits are really nice, but this one really hit home for me. It fits in my collection very nicely, and perhaps it should fit in yours too. So we did get these. I know they'll be gone soon, but hopefully we'll be able to get some more. So grab them up while you can, and join the German railway party with me. I have a lot of fun with it. All right, let's bring Lee in here and see what he's got going on this evening. Hey, Lee, how are you?
Hey, Brandon. Hey, everybody out there. How you doing? So, Brandon, you were just talking about the monster kits. Well,
oh yeah,
60 years ago, I was building the Aurora kits and everything, and I had all those. Anyone I ever wanted, I could have and everything. So I built most of those.
Okay.
I even made a fun house in my basement using some of the stuff and everything when I was a kid. It was actually the House of Horrors.
Well, it's, you see those kits from time to time at shows, and just that old style of box, and it's really neat. And so I really like what X Plus has been doing, trying to recreate that look and feel, not only in their kits, but their boxes, but not just their boxes, but how they wrap the boxes. It's even got the same style of wrapping on it that the Aurora kits did. So
that's cool.
It's neat. It's a cool throwback, but it's also a really nice modern kit too.
Right.
So, well, we've got some questions over here in the chat. Where are you from? Where do you live? All that kind of stuff. So why don't we answer all those with one big question? Tell us a little about yourself. How did you get into the hobby, and who are you? I know who you are, but some of these guys may not.
All right. So I personally worked in the hobby business since 1979. But I was born into the industry right out of World War II. This is a picture of my father when he was 23, and he was working at United Model, which was one of the largest distributors at the time in the country. There were a lot of regional distributors back then all over the country, but they were the first to start kind of going national and everything. And I grew up in that industry, and I could have any model I wanted, but I always went to the defective pile, and I kit bashed my own kits using the defective kits that they were, bringing back, that were sent back and everything. But I started in the hobby business in 1979. That was after my father warned me about getting into this business. I had been in college and everything, and I was in pre-med. Well, things happened, and I ended up getting my degree in TV, radio, and film production, and found out that was a lifestyle after 4 or 5 years I didn't want to have anything to do with. And so my dad's boss, Irving Gassner, said, "Hey, why don't you come work for us? We're opening a new territory in Arizona." And sure enough, I started with United Model that year. And after my first year, I got Rookie of the Year out of 60 salesmen and actually got the top position. Well, I worked for them for 10 years until 1989, covering the state, every hobby shop you can imagine. And ended up getting invited to come down and interview for the sales manager's job at MMD, which is the sister company of Squadron.
Right.
And so in 1989, moved the family to Texas. Wish I would have got here a little earlier because we love Texas. We live in the Metroplex area. I have a partner by the name of Ted Sparrow, and Ted has 5 Hobbytown stores in the Dallas area. So, and I live not more than 15 miles from the original Squadron facility in Carrollton. So, you know, once in a while I'll drive by there. It's kind of sad to see the empty facility and everything. And
Okay, so it's still empty. Nobody's using it for
well,
anything yet.
let's put it this way. I haven't been by in about 6 months, so I don't
Okay.
know if there's anybody in there right now or not.
Right.
But at the time, I don't know if you ever made it down here or not, but here's, if you can see in this picture, and this was hanging in the offices at the very end. And this is a story that was done on MMD. And this is me 36 years ago. And next to me there is Chuck Horansky. And then up here, you see all the employees. And we were running just over about 100 employees at the time. And but the wholesale division, which was the area that I was in charge of, I was very blessed. I was very blessed in that when I came in was right around the time, right before Desert Storm. And during that period, I don't think there was anything we could do wrong at that time because we were breaking record after record. And, you know, I was in a kind of precarious position because I was the wholesale sales manager, but I was also the buyer for all the domestic products. And so I couldn't blame the buyer for bad buys, and I couldn't blame the sales guy for not doing his job. So it all fell on me. So it was kind of interesting. But it was a good time. It was a great company to work for during that time. They had if you've ever heard of the book In Search of Excellence by Waterman and Peters, they use that book as though it was a Bible. And we made sure, Jerry Campbell made sure that the customer was always taken care of. So it was kind of cool because, you know, you have people call in, they have problems, things like this. Well, we'd always make sure that their problems were taken care of. But then 1 month later, all the managers had to call all those people that had problems to find out if we lived up to their expectations. And very rarely did we not live up to the expectations that created a legacy for you today.
Well, the interesting thing talking about that and talking about us today is the fact, I mean, there's a lot of good hobby shops out there online. You know, we've got a lot of competitors. There's a lot of, believe it or not, there are still some brick and mortar hobby shops out there. And some of those perhaps are quite old as well. But just the fact of how old this company is, there's very few other companies that are still with us that can say that they've been around this long that do what we do. So it is very interesting, and the amount of history involved under this company's name is quite cool to me. And it's not a day goes by hardly where I don't learn something else new that they used to do or that they did at one point in time. And I'm sure I'm going to learn some other things this evening that I didn't know about.
Well, not only that, but they were, and as you are today, known worldwide.
Right.
So every year for that I was with them from 89 to 94, I went to the Nuremberg Toy Fair. Well, that was our biggest show of the year. But the real cool part of it is the people coming from the Eastern Bloc countries who would show up at our booth. And these were all guys like Edward were just getting their start. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget the first meeting we had with Edward. And I can't think of the owner's name. What's his name?
Are you talking about Vlad? No, not Vlad.
Who's the bald guy?
Yeah, Vladimir.
So the very first time we met with them was in a hotel in Nuremberg, and we didn't speak Czech. They didn't speak English, and we didn't have anyone that could go from English to Czech, but we had our agent, a guy by the name of Phil Brooks, who later started Emhar Models. If you remember Emhar,
yeah,
Phil was our agent in Europe for the publishing company. And Phil spoke German. Well, there was another guy there that spoke Czech and German. So the conversation all night went from Czech to German, German to English, and then back and forth all night long. And that was the start of us, our squadron starting to do business with Edward. But
wow.
a lot of these countries we were dealing with before even the wall came down. I remember one time in Nuremberg, it was in either the Polish, I think it was the Polish, it was a state-run booth, and all the model companies that were in Poland had to go through there. Well, we had the KGB sitting in the booth with us and everything. And it wasn't until a year later we started to hear the stories, after the KGB disappeared out of a lot of these places. But the Poles were kind of interesting because I remember meeting with them about 8 o'clock in the morning. They weren't going to do any business until we did a couple of shots of whatever their booze is and everything. So 8 o'clock in the morning, put a couple of those down. Well, by 9 o'clock, I'm hanging on to my seat because the room is going around like this. But that's how they like to do business and stuff. And but we met a lot of the great companies before the wall came down and after, where they really started to come out. And a lot of those have made it big here today.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Edward being one of those companies, of course, and then, Special Hobby, the guy, George or Yuri, he has told us similar stories about getting started before the wall came down. And then our current squadron artist, I'm sure we'll get into squadron artists in a few minutes, but Peter, who's been doing stuff for us lately, he told me stories about when he was a kid, about there was a company that was smuggling Squadron Signal books into the country. And that's how he got them. And he said he'd never known about them before. And he found, whatever the hobby shop wasn't supposed to, but they were bringing them in somehow. And that's how he got started looking at Squadron in action books.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that we met so many people that, way before the wall came down, we were dealing with Zvezda out of Russia and everything. And just after the wall came down, we sponsored a businessman from Zvezda, guy by the name of Vladimir. I can't remember what his last name was, but he was actually a former KGB agent himself. And he came and he spent 3 months with us. I was his liaison during that time and everything. And it was just interesting because when he first came here, we put him in an apartment and with a kitchen studio and everything. And I took him to the grocery store and we walked that entire store and he didn't even pull anything into his basket. I go, what's going on? Well, he was so blown away of the hundreds of choices he had of stuff that we had to go through and pick out stuff for him. It was just, it was a whole different world back then, I think.
I got you.
So he was with us for 3 months. He learned a lot of what we were doing. He took it back to Zvezda, and I'm not even sure, is Zvezda still around today? Or
they are. We don't really have much of anything really coming out of Russia, right now. So I've not had any contact with them, or I don't even remember. Wouldn't even be able to tell you what their new kits are. But as far as I know, they're still, they still exist.
Well, we used to joke that their boxes back then were like a recycled toilet paper. Everything was so poorly made back then, and some of these companies that were making models and other things were doing other things that were totally different than the model industry.
Yeah, so, and that's still the case with several companies I know. Modeling is one segment of their business, and then another section of their business is going to be something totally totally unrelated to the hobby world. But
right, exactly.
wow.
Exactly.
I'm looking over here to see what questions we can answer, and I got a couple that I'll just answer real quick so I don't ignore people. Ed wants to know about the new Trumpeter Montana. Ed, those will be here at the end of September. And let's see, lots of people saying hello that didn't make it in to the beginning, so I've just been kind of throwing your names up on the screen like this, so that lets you know that I see that you're in here. I see Jose's in here with us. Good to see you, buddy. He's right up the road from us now. Let's see. Lots of questions in here, guys. I'm going to try to keep the conversation related to Lee tonight. So if you got any questions you want to ask Lee, and where we're headed tonight, by the way, is specifically about Squadron Signal publications, which would be like the inaction books or the walk around books. We're getting to artwork, the artists who painted the original covers, and that's what you see in the background there all around Lee, and that's what we're going to get to in just a moment. David, talking about that bloody 100th poster, it is done, but I'm not going to show it tonight. That'll be for another night, but I'll just say that you're going to love it, and they're at the printer, and we'll have them soon. I'm trying to decide if I'm actually going to show them to you or if I'm just going to send them out and let you be surprised. So we'll find out soon. Let's see. I don't see any other questions at the moment about Lee, but we'll bring this one up. Bernard says he recognizes some of the art in your background, Lee. So let's move to the artwork. What are we looking at? How did you get this? Where did it come from?
Okay, so again, I worked there from 89 to 94, and for the first 10 years after I left, I was banned from the place because you don't quit there. If you quit, that's almost as bad as being fired and stuff.
Okay.
So I left, and then 10 years later, Jerry allowed me to come back and sell them, because when I left them, I became a manufacturer's rep, selling hobby stores, department stores. I sold Hobby Lobby, Michael's, and anyone that we could sell, museums, so forth. So I, over the years, represented many of the model companies that are out there. Not so much the ones today, because a lot of the ones, are gone, but Revell, Monogram, Hasegawa, DML, Glencoe, you name it, I represented most. Right. Minicraft, did a lot of them over the years. But when they were having problems the last few years, I was staying in touch with Richard Paulson, who was one of their people to the very end. And when they finally closed the doors, Richard said that they're going to be selling everything off. Well, Ted and I got together, and we ended up buying the publishing company with all the art. When we realized how much it was going to take to start publishing again, we decided to get with you and sell it off to you. And by the way, you're doing a great job in the books you're producing. They're beautiful and everything.
Well, it's just because I got good guys helping us do it.
I mean, they published over 800 books,
right,
in their time period. Yeah, they did a few things where they worked with a few other book companies, but they did about 800 titles, and all the different titles and the different categories and everything. So the one you see directly behind me is from the U2 book. First of all, everything you're going to see today is framed, and these frame pieces, there were about 80 framed pieces that they framed up the original art, and they hung in the offices at Squadron for 10 or 15 years. And then there's a few pieces that go back even farther, like the Junkers right there, and that one dates to 1974. Okay, that hung in the offices when they were still in Michigan. That's how far that piece goes back, right there. But we have probably 80% of all the art. There was a period back in either the 80s or the early 90s that I guess Jerry stored some of the art in a barn. And unfortunately, that art never survived. So we never had 100% of the art, but we have a huge quantity.
Right. And just to clarify, when Lee said we bought the publishing company, so what that means is we own the publishing company, Squadron Signal Publications. We own the rights to use that name to print our books, and it's the only thing that we don't have is what he kept, which is all the original artwork. Which that's why he has it. That's why he says we have. And just to real quickly answer some of these questions that are coming up, the same question in different ways over and over again. The artwork, prints of the artwork, yes, everything is for sale, and we're getting to that. That'll be later in tonight's show. But yes, a lot of this stuff is for sale. It will be for sale on squadron.com later this week, or starting later this week. We'll roll it out a little as we go. So we'll talk about what's available for you to purchase later. And Scott talking about, lots of questions about the books are probably going to come up tonight. Lee just mentioned that their Squadron printed over 800 different titles. They are not all available anymore, at least not as a new book. We currently have, I think, 10 new books that we have published since we took over the company that are still in print. They're still available. There's probably 2 or 3 dozen of the relatively newer books that we still have old stock of that we've just not run out of yet. And then everything, further back than that, you just have to find, in the secondary market somehow. And as far as there being a list of all the books, we're actually working on a checklist that we'll put on our website very soon. That's one of our authors, David Doyle. You've probably heard of David Doyle. If you go check out his website, he actually has a checklist on his website of all the Squadron books. So you can see that now there, or like I said, we'll have it posted on our website sometime as soon as I can finish compiling the list.
So what we have besides the front covers, we have back covers of the books, that the ones that obviously didn't use photographs or something like that. And then we have a lot of the centerfold art, the profiles and everything. And I know some of you have run into me at the shows. I've been selling a little profile, this and that. Well, we're directing our efforts now to work with Brandon and his father there at the Squadron.
Well, I hope we do a good job for you. I'm trying to move some of these pictures in. So all the ones that are going to be on our website soon, you can show us if you want, and then once you show us, I can pull one up on the digital screen so they can get a better look. So just keep that in mind.
So I don't have any of the stuff I sent you here. That's all at the office there. What I have here is we didn't have enough room at the office, and this is the last of the frame stuff that I have at home.
Well, here, I will show this one. We'll just give them a little teaser. So this is an example of something you will see on our website very soon in the next few days. So what he's got here is a picture of the artwork in the background, and then the picture of the actual book in the foreground. And so this is what you would get. Is that correct, Lee? If they buy one, they're going to get the actual the actual painting, the original, not a print, the real
no prints. We do make prints in an 11x14 of a few items and stuff, but everything you are getting the one-of-a-kind original art that was used to make the books. And you can see there the size of the painting versus the size of the book.
Now, do you have any of them that are not framed there with you?
I have a couple pieces that are really more so the F6F Hellcat, and you got to remember, none of this was made to sell as art. It was all done as illustration art. So, people have said to me in the past, well, why is there a lot of room at the top of the paintings? Well, when the painting was done and all the book was written, this was sent to the printer. At that time, they would add the titling and everything to the book. So just to give you an idea there, besides doing full covers, we have half covers. So over 40 or 50 years, the glue they used back then separated from the artboard. You can see it's browned on the back, but the images themselves, the actual paintings, have not been affected at all. Okay, so some of these I sell with both where it's still on the board, or if it has come off, we offer them separately. So here's the other half of that one.
Okay, I see. Yeah, and I missed a few things you just said because my machine fell off the desk and I had to restart real quick. So you were flying solo there for a minute and probably didn't even know.
No, I didn't. So, but then there's, again, questions come up. We've offered, just profiles and from interior art and everything, individuals. These are actual paintings done by Don Greer, but again, they fell off the original boards and everything.
Right.
People also ask me, well, why are some of them cut funny? Well, because back then it wasn't digital. Everything, right. They painted it, they cut it out, and then they saved room for whatever titling or descriptions they were going to put.
Yeah, because all these, you got to remember, guys, that all of these were done for the sole purpose of going inside of one of these in-action books.
Yes. Yes, they weren't ever made to be sold as art, but strictly as illustration art for the books.
Now, here's a question for you, Lee. You talked about they were never intended to be sold as art. Before you bought it with the intention of selling it, had any of this art ever been offered up for sale before, to your knowledge?
I do not believe. I know Squadron at one time made some very large posters of a few of the books, or the art of some of the books, and Greer signed those. We do have a few of those pieces still left, but no, they never produced them to sell it as art. I had not seen anybody. You will see Greer's art show up, though, because Don Greer did art for at least 8 or 9 different model companies.
Right.
He did it for Revell. He did it for Monogram. He started at AMT, okay? And that was his first job before he went to Squadron in the 60s. Well, Don passed away 2 years ago, and after he passed away, I was sitting with his wife and we were talking. Go to find out, Don Greer painted the original Star Trek Enterprise for AMT model kits.
Oh, wow.
Model kit. Don Greer, that was his work of art. And I don't know if you've seen this book before. It's called Box Top Air Power. Well, all the ones that you can see, the purple things, are all Don Greer originals, and they tell the story about it and stuff. So not only Don Greer, but Lou Drendel, who was also one of the main artists, who we do have several of his paintings, but they had multiple artists there at Squadron. Besides Don and Lou Drendel, you had Joe Sewell, Tom Tullis, who did a lot of the interior art and things, Perry Manley. These were guys that were all working there in the art department. The art department, when I was there, had about 10 or 12 people. I don't remember exactly. But whenever I had a chance, I would go back and stand behind Don Greer and watch him paint. And, usually after about 15, 20 minutes, he'd turn around and say, "Will you just leave me the hell alone so I can concentrate?" And so I'd have to go away and come back a few days later because I was just so fascinated to watch him work.
Well, being there and being able to see him and others do what they do, here's a good question from Brian Cabot. How did the artwork get chosen? So, like, did they give Don any? Did they just say, "Hey, I want to be 17," or did they give him any outline? How was this whole? How did it come to pass?
Well, there were numerous things. He a lot of what he worked off of was either photographs or sometimes he'd go out and do something in the field and everything, but he'd work out of photographs. But then again, you remember you had a author, you had a editor at Squadron. We had a full-time editor. And so between all of them, they would kind of brainstorm and get an idea what they're going to do. But it was pretty much up to Greer when he found it. And if you look in the books, I mean, B-52, well, you might have, 20 different color images. Something I found yesterday was from the original B-52 book. This is the interior. It's all done. You can see you got boxcar, you got thumper, and you got double exposure. But this was from the centerfold from a book that I think dates to 1978 or so. I don't know exactly. 77, I'm sorry. 1977. So a lot of art. Sometimes he did it directly onto the board. Other times he did it on canvas and then glued it to the board. Don Greer didn't sign all his art. He just so happened to sign this one. It's signed 77. And I asked him a couple of years ago before he passed, why didn't he sign all the art? He says, well, sometimes I just didn't think about it. And, so.
Well, but here's a question. Since you're talking about that, here's a question. Standard canvas size. Did he always use the same medium for painting? What was his
oils? I see the question there. He was mostly a gouache painter. He used airbrushing. He used pen and inks. He used some watercolor. He used a little everything. Eventually, towards the end, he started to go digital. Okay, but it was all original Don Greer art. And it was really kind of sad when I found out that, a lot of it got lost because it wasn't properly stored and everything. But we do have a great selection of armor and ships. I don't think I've even offered any of the ships up for sale yet. And so many more of the different things that they have. I mean, we even have, I don't know if you know, he did a book on fire trucks. Okay.
Yep. I have that.
And he also painted, I think, some of the fire truck art that AMT used for their model kits and stuff.
Wow.
So, I mean, he was, as a matter of fact, I got a picture. This in 1994, a Korean model magazine called The Hobbyist, I don't even know if they're still around, came and did a story on us. And the reason they did a story on us is because we had a Korean gentleman working there by the name of Mr. Joe, and his father was a big general in the South Korean Army. And he was very knowledgeable and that about it. As a matter of fact, this is a picture of Mr. Joe right there. And then right next to him there, that's me half my life ago when I was 35. That's Perry Manley right there. And then I don't remember them, but here's a picture of Don Greer right there on top.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Working at his desk. Scott Battistoni, who did a lot of the true details and resin parts. He did most of the masters. And then Mike Bobby, who hired on first as my assistant and eventually went into the art department. And for any of you who know Bobby's Hobby House, his family ran that for over 50 years down in Pensacola, Florida.
Okay.
So I say that pages have fallen out because I show it all the time. But
This question for Michael, real quick, Lee. They won't be folded. I'm assuming you're referring to any prints, perhaps that B-17 print we were talking about. No, nothing from us will be folded. It'll come rolled up. Now, there was a couple other.
No. It'll all come flat. Everything will come flat.
Yeah, definitely not folded. We don't like folded, either flat. And if you're talking about the prints, I was talking about a little while ago, the not the originals, the digital prints of our newer stuff. Those will either come flat or they'll come rolled up. Now, talking about prints, Lee. I know you've got your originals, but I also know that you have scanned your originals in. Are you going to offer prints? Smaller, lesser expensive prints that people can have.
We're offering 11 by 14s for I think it's either $9.99 in shipping, or it was $12.99 in shipping. I don't remember exactly what it was.
But that'll be available though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good deal. So if you missed out on the one of a kind original, perhaps you can get a copy of it.
Well, most of what we do in prints is on demand if somebody wants it. Okay.
Sure.
But some of the artwork we have even dates back to 1968, that period. Before the books happened, you had the mail order, but you also, they made their own line of lead figures or figures called Squadron Reuben. Okay. Yep. That was their first project. I even had the original artwork. These are the original artwork that was used to.
Oh, wow.
These were the cards that went inside each thing, but this is the original artwork. It was done by Ray Rubens. Ray Rubens eventually went on to open the Grenadier Figure Company. And if you were ever into Dungeons and Dragons, he made all the Dungeons and Dragons figures for many years.
Okay.
But besides him, you had Angus McBride, who became world famous in not Dune, but I can't remember the series and stuff, but he became very, very famous. But even Uwe Weist, who was their very first author, this is the first book made, and it's Aircraft Number 1. It's not even says Squadron Signal. It doesn't say Squadron Signal until you come in here. All the early ones use just a image, not a full painting on them. But then again, that's when these things cost $350 or $395 and that. But which leads me to a little surprise I got for you.
All right. Well, let's see what you got.
All right. See that Junkers Ju-88?
I do.
That's going in your museum.
All right.
Okay. You see the tank up there above it?
I do.
The light Panzer.
Okay.
That came out of the same 1974 book called, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Lichti.
Okay.
The light Panzers. And then I've also got a copy of one of the early figure kits. That's a German rocket pilot.
Okay.
And then I have the original art. I don't have it here, but I have the original art for 1974. It's framed.
The catalog.
Well, it's the art that was used for the catalog.
Yeah.
I have that. And then something that I know you wanted to get this. I sold it at the show.
Yeah.
What I've got for you is the largest piece of Squadron centerfold art that was ever made.
All right.
And instead of calling it the Leopold, we're going to call it the Leibold.
All right.
And I've got that for you, buddy. I've got
that is awesome.
The Leopold.
Well, anybody that watches this show every week knows that I love my German railguns, so that is awesome.
And I felt bad because I know at the AMP show you had been looking at it, and then somebody else came and bought it. And
well, I'm glad they got what they wanted. Hey, I'm happy with what we got at the AMP show. This this is what I picked up from you there. And I really love this thing. The colors, and guys, if you've never seen one of these Don Greer paintings in person, which I had not seen many, seeing a picture of them does not do the colors justice. I mean, this thing in person, it almost glows. And that's why I picked this one. It's just the colors, the contrast. Don was a fantastic painter. I'll just say that.
And like I say, even from the littlest profile art to the full-size paintings, they're gorgeous. And even the small profiles frame up beautifully.
Wait, sorry, Lee. I'm waving at a buddy of mine, Randy.
Oh, that's fine. So people don't realize that Squadron was known all over the world.
Right.
We knew that when we were there. They sold over 13 million books in the new market. And I wouldn't doubt it in the aftermarket, the eBays, the Amazons, it's another 10 million books.
Yeah, there's no telling. I mean, I have never been to a model show where there wasn't at least 2 or 3 vendors that had a box full of old Squadron books.
Yeah, and one of the things when I'm at these shows, people tell me all the time, they come in with their list, and there are guys that I'm seeing have 6, 7, 8, almost 800, almost every book that was ever made and everything. Now, I know they don't have this one. They might have it some other way, but they don't have it when it's all in Russian.
Yeah, that's a good question. Now that you mentioned that, I want to ask you, I knew about the Russian print books. Are there any other languages that they got translated to that you know about?
I think there might have been some German ones, and only because I think some of Uwe Weist, who was the first author doing the early German armor and the early German aircraft and everything, that I think that some of those would be German, but the Russian one is the only one that I've seen. And then here's one of the figure things also in Russian.
Now, what were those done when you were at Squadron, or was that before?
These were done afterwards.
Okay. I'm just curious how all that came. Who got that project done? Why did that happen? It just.
I really don't know. I can't answer that. Maybe because I know some of the Squadron people are listening in tonight, because I was going to let them. Maybe some of them can answer that question.
Sure.
But let me see a couple other entries. I found the centerfolds of the B-36 book.
Ah.
So in this case, you can see they are drawn and then they are glued on. They're done on canvas, and then the canvas is attached to a bigger board. Here's one of the profiles from the Corsair book. One of the Corsair books.
Now, was Don? I know that you mentioned Don was on the payroll, so to speak, and he worked there at the facility. Was he the only artist on staff, or did they have others?
No, there were 10 artists on staff.
Okay.
But you got to remember.
I didn't know if they did any freelance hiring in addition to Don and the other staff guys. I mean, because back then, we're doing good to do a couple books a year now, but back then you guys were rocking out several books a month.
Yeah, Don worked full time. But we had guys helping Don with some of the interior, the detailed drawings, all the paintings pretty much, or a large part of them. Tom Tullis helped in a lot of that. But a lot of the artists were also, when a model kit came in, they were doing a little original piece of art on every model to put in the catalog, where today, you use, full pictures. And I got to say, your last catalog I saw rivaled anything that they did in their day. It was gorgeous. It really was. And I heard you talking earlier, or one of the other podcasts, that you're working on a new catalog.
Yeah, we just started working on the next issue this past week, and Peter says he'll have the layout of the new front cover done here in a week or two. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like.
Once a month, this would come out once a year, but once a month we would do the flyer. Well, come Friday afternoon, the entire facility would shut down, and everybody who worked there, could be up to 100 people, were folding and putting stamps and getting ready to mail the flyer. Every month this happened. And it was quite the thing to, get it out. I mean, this is before the internet, and it was pretty wild.
Right. All right. I got a fun question for you that hopefully you know a little bit more than I do. The guys in the chat are talking about this. Let me pull up a picture of it real quick. So since you mentioned the Dungeons and Dragons a moment ago, I guess it sparked some questions.
The Down in the Dungeon book?
Yeah, sparked some questions about this. And, I see Chris Martins and Ken are talking back and forth about it. And Chris, is it first edition D&D? And Ken said probably not. Well, the answer to that is absolutely not, because actually it had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons other than, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, other than they just used very similar styling to take advantage of the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons at the time.
Yes. So that was the only book they ever did, called Down in the Dungeon. When we first got the company, that was the first art we sold off, and we sold it at a major auction house. And it was just incredible how well this stuff did. But the book, when it came out, and I believe it was 1980, which is right there in the heart of Dungeons and Dragons, I think started a couple years earlier. The book itself was a failure because the pictures were great in it, but there was basically no verbiage or story behind it. And then they ran into a couple legal issues at the time, and I don't know exactly how it worked, but there is a famous artist, I know you've all heard of him before. He did Frank Frazetta.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were accused that some of that art was too close to Frank's work. And so they had legal issues. So I don't know exactly all the details because I wasn't there yet, but the book as a whole was a failure, but the art was gorgeous. And some of the D&D people there's a dungeon scene in there that they would use it for different things and stuff. But you're right. Basically, it was just to tag along. Didn't work, and you never saw another book.
Yeah, and
that's all Greer's art in that book.
Was it all Greer? Was there? I thought there was one other guy that did 2 or 3 of them.
No, you might be right. Stern, I think, is his name, maybe.
Yeah,
he actually is credited with writing the book, but if you look in the book, there's nothing.
There's nothing written. I think there was one. I've got a copy of it. The aftermarket for this book is nuts. So here's that. When we were looking at the picture, that's the current eBay listing for that.
Yeah, I see. I definitely seen that. But we sold all that art off. It was just a lot of fun and drew a lot of excitement when we 81. I guess.
Yeah, 1981 is that.
Okay.
So. And this is funny. You know how in every in-action book, it always says something about if you have any original pictures from World War II or whatever, send them to us. I like this one. If you have any photographs of orcs, dragons, monsters, or dungeon dwellers of any nation, please send them to Squadron Signal Publications. I mean, what an absolute different thing than the normal Squadron Signal Publications book. But that's one of those cool, unique things about the company's history that, you're going through and then you see this and you're like, wait, that was Squadron? And you just never know what you're going to find out about this company's long history of, what they got into.
So do you want to see some of the artwork I have here?
Yeah, show us what you got.
So you see the U2, and that will be one we're going to bring up. But when I offer that one, I will also be offering the book about Gary Powers. And it
Nice.
also happens to be signed by Gary Powers. Okay.
Very
So
nice.
that'll be something that we got coming in the future. Hold on here. Whoops. Okay, so whoops. Let's see here. So the JU-88, I told you that. Okay. Actually, we're going to see from the original P40 book up there, the front cover. Can you see it?
I can.
Okay, and then below it there, we have the, that's the back cover of the Lou Drendel Hornet book.
Okay.
Right there. And then, okay, we've got a Mariner and we've got a Catalina. The Catalina is from it's half of the back cover of the Catalina book. And then the Mariner book, you can see the book down there with the painting. We've got the front and back covers there of the Air War over Southeast Asia by Lou Drendel, the one with the guy in the helmet, and then the back cover, if you can see it right there. Okay, you got.
Yeah, Lee, let me ask you this real quick. This might be a stupid question, but all these are canvas, the paintings, and they're framed. Are these do these frames have glass, or are they open for the canvas to be exposed?
They all have glass.
Okay.
Okay, and if when these come up and we sell them, you'll have the option of shipping with glass or without glass.
Right.
Because I have to charge more for shipping with the glass because of, the chance that it might shatter.
Well, something. Yeah, and you got to spend a lot more, time and bigger size on packaging and
correct.
All that. Wow. Okay,
so then you can see, I can't quite see, but you should be able to see the Albatross. And then I think it's Air War over Korea. You've got the M113. Can you see these?
Oh, yeah, we see them. Yeah, you're doing good.
Spinning the camera around here.
They look like they keep getting bigger as you turn around.
The standard size was 18 by 24.
Okay.
He did a few of them that were twice that size, and he did some that were, as small as 20 by 17 or so. Okay. The Centurion, like you see, there is a bigger one. Hanging on the wall, the P40. Can you see that? It's in the back.
Okay, now we can. Yep.
Okay, and then above it, you got the B-57 Canberra.
Yep, see that.
Okay, and then the Hind Mi-24.
Yep, we see that one.
Basically, everything that I've shown here tonight is all from 1973 all the way to 1988. So I kind of brought you a wide variety of things.
Now, did they stop? A lot of your stuff after this, they're not framed. Did they simply run out of office space for?
Well, no, they did all the framing at one time. So everything here was in their files, and somebody said, "Hey, why are we not framing this?
I got you.
Putting it in the offices." And
so all this stuff kind of existed all at the same time, and they framed it all at the same time.
Correct.
I got you.
And like I say, the cool thing was when we went in there to get everything, this piece with me and Chuck and everything that had been in there for 35 years, and I was able to get that also. It's a
you need to scan that in on your fancy scanner you got, so I can print one out and hang up a new copy of it in our new spot.
Okay, well, I'll get it scanned, but we sold the scanner, so.
So
after we used it, we sold it and everything.
That's fine. Well, you can take a nice picture of it with your phone. Hey, you got a question real quick from Robert Cheney. He says, do you remember Tucson Train and Hobby on Speedway Boulevard?
Absolutely. They were one of my biggest customers. Did Robert work there when I was there?
I don't know, Robert, if you worked there, or if you remember Lee being there, let us know in the chat.
Okay, so that would have been sometime between 1979 and 1989. I serviced Tucson Hobby, and I'll never forget one time I was sitting in the store and I'm looking out the front window of the store, which faced Mount Lemmon. And
Okay.
at that moment, I looked out there. I watched a 747 with Senator Jake Garn's space shuttle flying in, carrying it on the back and everything. And so for the next couple weeks, I'm telling everybody how I'd seen the space shuttle. Well, I happened to be in one of the hobby stores up in Phoenix at the time. And as I'm telling him, we hear over the radio that the Challenger had exploded. And it was, it's kind of touching.
Right.
So this is a piece of art that I've never been able to identify what it came from. Matter of fact, I had posted it somewhere and I listed it as the YB-49 Flying Wing. I was corrected that it was the XB-35 flying over the White House here. So if anybody does know this is a famous picture that was taken and he painted it, but I'd like to know what he did it for. Did he do it for model box art or whatever?
Yeah, I've never seen that. Was that Don?
That was Don, yes.
Okay.
I also have what we have is a lot of box art because he did the box art for a lot of different companies.
That makes sense.
Check model box.
Okay.
This is the original artwork.
Nice. All right. Show. Can you hold that there and hold the box up too, just so people can get an idea? With all these model kits that you see in a painting, this is how it's done, and you can see the difference there. And it is what it is when they print these boxes. It looks great, but it blows my mind to see how much better the original painting looks.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, sometimes when I show a book, the book might be pretty faded and everything, but then later on, when they went to the printer and everything, especially as they started to go digital, you could see where some adjustments were made at the printer and everything.
Right.
But every once in a while, you'll find a painting that Don did a correction on or things like that, which is kind of interesting. The same goes with Lou Drendel. I don't know if you were familiar with this book.
Oh yeah, I've got one.
Okay. So, everything that, a lot of the things in here is the art that Lou Drendel did. And Lou is still alive, by the way. I think he's 84 or 85 years old.
Okay.
But
now, so we've talked a lot, or you've talked a lot about Don Greer, about Lou Drendel paintings, but you mentioned there were other artists. Do you have originals from any of the other artists? Were they a lot of one-offs, or?
There are a lot of one-offs, is what they are.
Okay.
You had Uwe Weiss, you had Lou Drendel, who wrote their own books and did their own art. Later on, Uwe would write books and maybe Greer would do the art. I just want to mention that because I just thought of it. The JU-88, that is one of the first books, not the first, but one of the early books of a full color cover.
Oh, okay.
Versus
after they started with that.
Right.
Huh. Here's a fun question for you that'll be interesting if you know the answer to it, Lee. Tom wants to know if you remember the JU-87 artwork that had a missing tail wheel on the cover. I have no idea which one that is. Does that ring a bell to you?
I don't know this story, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't. That JU-87 piece, I think, was one of the pieces that got lost. So it's not even something that I can go try to find or anything. But
if that was a book that ever ended up getting reprinted, it would not surprise me if the reissue had not been fixed. So that your original artwork may have been fixed.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
That's it. Tom, if you've got a picture of that, email it to me sometime. I'd love to see it. I hadn't heard that story.
So, and also I wanted to point out the Panzer that I'm giving you.
Yeah.
All those came with the original cover over the artwork, and this is all written by Uwe Weiss.
Okay.
And they're telling the story, and maybe what page it's going to be on and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, those that you're giving us, and that's super awesome of you.
I've got several more at the office.
Okay. Well, thank you. So we're going to hang those up. And you said,
I hear there's going to be a museum someday.
There is. I was taking pictures of it today. They just put our air conditioner in there yesterday. So I'm excited. So you said that those, though, the Junkers artwork, that was hanging in the original store?
That was in the original store up in, I think it was Warren.
Okay. That's awesome.
Right outside Detroit.
Yeah. Well, the legacy continues, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great time. It was a great company. I don't know if you've ever told the story of why they went away the first time or stuff, and whether you want to even get into that. I don't want to, all I can say is that when you take a company and you try to change it without knowing what the company was in the first place,
right,
it's the problem.
Well, we'll get into that another time. I want everybody to know we'll wrap up in another 15 minutes or so. Try to keep it at an hour and a half. But everybody that is interested in all this history of the company that Lee knows, because he knows a lot. He's got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. We're actually going to do another pre-recorded interview together that's not in the live, kind of like I've done with the ICM lady and Mini Art. So we're going to do that sometime, hopefully in the near future, and it'll be a full length. He'll tell everything he knows, and so any of this history of Squadron will be recorded, and we'll get into all that fun kind of stuff at that point, Lee.
I'd like to say to everybody too that if they're looking for particular art, from a particular book, send the requests into you, and we will try to get those.
Absolutely. Anything you want. If there's an old book, like the very first Squadron book you ever remember getting as a kid, if you would like to have that artwork hanging on your wall, email me. And I'll get with Lee, and we'll find out if that exists. And if it does, perhaps you can buy that and hang it up in your hobby room.
Yeah, it was cool, Brandon, that Squadron was the first company really to make books for modelers, but also historical information. And so many people in our industry, in the hobby industry, modelers and this and that, grew up on Don Greer, Lou Drendel. And like you said, there are people that have, tons of the Squadron books. So right. I mean, that was one of the important things, I think. Later on, you got all these other companies started making books, but for many years, it was only Squadron.
That is true. Here's you a good one, Bernard. Do you know anything about this? The Mini in Action series books.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do have two of as a matter of fact, those art pieces, I think I have all the Mini in Actions. On those, it was one painting and it was split, so where it folded. So you have the front cover and back cover on one piece of art. And is there a particular one he was looking for?
Well, I think he was curious. He says, what was the inspiration and story behind those? So what was the thinking? Why did they make those? What was the...
I think a couple things. They wanted a lower price point. That was one of them. And I think the other thing is some of the aircraft they did some of these books on, there just wasn't the information like we have on a lot of other aircraft and everything. Right.
Yeah. I've got a lot of those Mini in Action books, and my favorite one was the Twin Mustang. it's a neat little book.
That actually, I think, is the one that I sold, was the Twin Mustang.
Oh, it's one of my favorite ones, so it doesn't surprise me that you sold that one. All right. Well, let's And maybe I forgot to ask you this. Mark was asking if you're in Arizona. No, Lee, tell us where do you live?
Well, before I came to Texas, I lived in Arizona for 10 years, working for United Model. Previous to that, I was born in Chicago, raised in Detroit, and then right out of college ended up in Arizona. Now I live in the Metroplex here in Dallas, and like I say, it's not far from Squadron, and like I said, I'm glad I got here when I did.
Absolutely. Well, Lee, like I said, Lee and I are going to be doing another pre-recorded long interview who knows how long it'll be, but we'll do that here in the next couple of months, and I'll get it posted to the channel. Of course, I'll let you all know when that happens, because there's a lot of other interesting things I'm sure that Lee would love to share that we just don't have time to do on our Wednesday night show. So we'll get into that. But we, in the next day or two, perhaps by the weekend, we will start rolling out some of Lee's artwork on the Squadron website. You'll see them. They are one of a kind, hand painted by Don Greer. I think the ones you sent me, there's a couple of Lou Drindles in there as well. So if you want one, make sure to jump on it because they are one of a kind. It's
also I wanted to point out,
yeah,
Brandon, when you buy one of the pieces of art, you will get a copy of the original book.
Oh,
I have,
okay.
I think, almost every one. I have a copy of the book, so that will
yeah, kind of like the junkers behind you. You've got the painting, and then you've got the book sitting right in front of it.
Well, and I've also seen some people have sent me who have bought art, frame it with the book underneath. They'll mat the painting and the book, and the book will be matted underneath, and it makes a great display piece.
Right. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, you guys look for those. We'll get those posted up soon. Yeah, Michael said thanks for your hard work setting up for the show, Lee, and I agree with that. You looks like you spent a little time there getting everything nice and set up so we can see it, and it's just very cool. I appreciate you coming on here tonight.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to doing a full interview with you and just hearing all those old wacky stories because I'm sure you got a bunch of them.
All right. Sounds great, man.
All right, Lee. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care. God bless everyone.
Thank you, buddy. Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that. It's just interesting to see all that stuff. It's interesting to hear from Lee being at Squadron back in the day, so to speak, and being right in the middle of all the action. Being able to see Don paint these things in person would have been really, really cool. But like I said, I'll have some of this artwork. We'll get it posted on the website soon. Lee's going to send me what he wants to offer in waves and batches. So the first wave and the first batch will go up on the website here in the next few days. So be looking for that, and we'll see how it goes. And next week, we've got show and tell. So if you have not already, please send me pictures of your model, whatever you like, ships, planes, tanks, figures, cars, whatever it is that you build, something that's out of the box, something that we don't usually see, scratch built stuff, whatever it is that you like to build and you like to model, send me finished pictures, and I'd love to show everybody next Wednesday night in our show and tell. And you can email those pictures to me at info@squadron.com. As always, let me know if you need anything. Our phones are finally working about 90% of the time now. So between 10 and 3, Monday through Friday, you can catch me. Our phone number is listed at squadron.com. And of course, email me anytime. I'd be happy to help you with anything you need. And until next week, guys, you take it easy. I really appreciate you.